Hey guys, good evening, good evening, good evening. We're just trying to make sure everything is running, all systems are go. So just want to make sure you can hear me and see me okay. I'm doing the same thing, checking here. So it looks like we're good here. You guys give me a thumbs up or uh, put in the comments that you can hear and see everything okay. Getting ready to get this evening cranked up here. Welcome back to our midweek refuel. I'm excited for tonight. We're going to give you guys a couple more minutes to come in. Make sure that you are tagging. Make sure that you share this. Hey, what's going on, man? My brother, Weiniger, how are you, man? Glad you could make it tonight. We're going to be talking more about this table tonight, guys. You know, we started this conversation a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to continue it. You saw it today in my post, my little caption there. We're going to talk more about this because it's been heavy in my spirit, and it's something that's been prevalent on social media, and not just social media, but I've been seeing it on other platforms. I've been seeing it. It's been the focus of conversation for a lot of people, for a lot of individuals who are life coaches or maybe they're licensed therapists. But for whatever reason, this has been the topic of conversation, right? This what did you bring to the table conversation. And the more I prayed over it, the more I thought about it, the more I was listening to these conversations, the more I was like, that's not really what's important. And we've got to change our mindset. We've got to rewire ourselves, right? Change the way that we think, because it's not what they bring to the table. And then we're going to dive into that tonight. As I told you, we're going to dive more into that tonight because we've got to think about the person that's arriving at our table. And then we're going to step on some toes tonight because you need to make sure that you are the right kind of person at somebody else's table. So, guys, make sure that you are sharing this. Make sure if you don't see anybody in New Life, if you know somebody who could benefit from this word, or you know someone who should be here, make sure you're tagging them. Make sure you let them know that we are on. We're going to get started here in just 2 more minutes. We're going to go ahead and get rolling, but give you guys some time to make sure that you're tagging, make sure that you're sharing this. As you hear me say all the time, you might be the only reason tonight that someone else is encouraged. You might be the only reason tonight that someone else is inspired. You might be the only reason that someone changes the way that they think. You might be the only reason that someone says, man, you know what? I've never considered it that way. And let me do some work on the inside. Let me make some changes and some adjustments. Let me become introspective so that I can do something about the situation that I'm in. Because a lot of us want to point fingers, but many of us want to look and say, you know what? I have a responsibility. I have a role to play in the situation that I have found myself in. Whatever that looks like. If it's not going well, maybe you stayed there too long. You ignored some red flags, whatever the case may be. I don't want to digress too far, but the point being that you have the ability, and with this social media platform, with this digital sanctuary, we have the ability to reach so many. And it takes no time at all to tag somebody. It takes no time at all to share. So I encourage you guys to continue to do that. And we're going to get started in just 1 more minute. So hope you guys are excited. I want to say it. I'm not going to be on before you long tonight, but I don't know. This is something that I really want us to dive into, and I really want to lay the groundwork and get some more context around why we should be thinking about who and not what. So as you guys are piling in here and we're getting ready, get your notebooks out, get your prepare your heated kernels of corn accordingly. and let's sit down and let's enjoy a great time of fellowship. So guys, we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, as you come in, make sure that you're sharing, make sure that you are tagging people, let them know that we are on, and make sure that if you have your own platform, your own page, share this to that page too. If you've got a following, share it to that page too. Let everybody know that we are here and that we are going to get into a word tonight. But first, let's go ahead and pray. Father God, we thank you for this opportunity. We thank you for this time of fellowship. We thank you for the people who are going to be coming here and joining us live. We thank you for everybody who's going to be hearing it later on, those who will watch this later. We ask that you will just continue to work through us, work with us, work in us, that we can continue to be what you call us to be in this season. This has been our grand reset. This has been the year of executing a hard reset. Many of us have reset in a number of ways, and we want to continue to do that hard work. We want to continue to do the work that you've called us to do internally so that we can get realigned, that we can continue to be in communication with you, that we can continue to be engaged, and that we can continue to go out here and do the work of the kingdom. Ask that you will just be with me tonight, Father God. Ask that you will just speak to me and speak through me. Let this be the words that you have put in me to give to the people, and that a word that will inspire them, will encourage them, will challenge them, but most importantly, will let them know that there is opportunity to continue to grow, that they've woken up this morning, that they are here tonight because there's a word for them. Based all these things in Jesus Christ's name, we pray. Amen and amen. Guys, I'm just excited about this word. We are really going to dive deep into the concept of who was at the table. As you guys heard me just talk about briefly before we prayed, a couple of weeks ago, I did a positive pivot. And for those who may be hearing that term for the first time, the positive pivot is where I go live on Saturdays, because Saturday is that transition day from the week before into the upcoming week. And so on the positive pivot, we try to give you a word of encouragement because, yes, you've already made it through a week, no matter how bad that week was. And you can look forward to your next week with excitement and anticipation for what God is doing. And so a couple of weeks ago in our positive pivot, we talked about excusing yourself from the table. And what we talked about was the fact that in this entire conversation about what people bring to the table, we're missing a key component, or our focus is on the wrong thing. And in all of that, we determined that it wasn't about what you bring to the table, even though that's something that's been a point of focus for at least this entire year. As a matter of fact, we've been executing this hard reset. I've been seeing more and more of these conversations across all platforms, from professionals, from pseudo therapists and influencers, and people who are just, maybe they're coming out of something and now they're reposting positive information and positive videos or whatnot. But everyone's been focused on what someone brings to the table. And the reason why that's not important is because you can bring anything to the table, anything. And you can pretend to be someone who has things to bring to the table, but your character is going to show through at some point. How many of us have been fooled by that wolf in sheep's clothing? How many of us have been fooled by someone who claimed to have all sorts of things to bring to the table when in fact their character was in shambles, when in fact their character was rotten, when in fact their character was perverted, when in fact they were infecting the rest of the table? You see, we got to make sure that we have discernment when we reset in this season to understand that it doesn't matter what you bring to the table. Many people who are of quality don't really have a whole lot to contribute just yet because God's still working on them. You see, we're focused on the wrong things. We got to make sure that the people who arrive at our table are people of substance, people of good character, people of high moral standard, people with ethics, people that we can communicate with, that we have shared experiences with, people that we can learn from, as well as impart knowledge into, and that we're all growing in the same direction. You see, we've been focused on the wrong things for far too long. We keep looking at, what do you bring to the table? Do you have good credit? Do you take care of yourself? Do you have a good job? Do you make this amount of money? How many kids do you have? Do you take care of them? And all those things are things of interest, but I would say that they're not the most important things, because anyone can be doing all the right things and still be a horrible human being. And that's going to bring us to our scripture, the most infamous table to ever be set, the Last Supper. And this is Matthew chapter 26. Verse 17 through 30. We're going to read all 30. And then, as a treat, but also to add more context, I'm going to read a couple paragraphs out of the article that I just published this past Sunday about this very topic in The Lounge, which is the column for men, but something that I think applies to everybody. So first, we're going to read this scripture, Matthew chapter 26, verses 17 through 30. And it reads, "On the first day of the festival of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, 'Where do you want us to make preparations for you to eat Passover?'" Where do you want me to make preparations? Prepare the table. Where do you want to prepare the table? That's key. Just think about that for a second. He replied, "Go to the city to a certain man and tell him, 'The teacher says, my appointed time is near. I'm going to celebrate the Passover with my disciples at your house.' So the disciples did as Jesus had directed them and prepared the Passover. When the evening came, Jesus was reclining at the table with the 12. And while they were eating, he said, 'Truly I tell you, one of you will betray me.' They were very sad and began to say to him one after the other, 'Surely you don't mean me, Lord.' Jesus replied, 'The one who has dipped his hand into the bowl with me will betray me. The Son of Man will go just as it is written about him. But woe to the man who betrays the Son of Man. It would be better for him to have not been born.' Then Judas, the one who would betray him, said, 'Surely you don't mean me, Rabbi.' Jesus answered, You have said so. While they were eating, Jesus took the bread and he gave thanks. He broke it and gave it to the disciples, saying, "Take and eat. This is my body." Then he took the cup, and when he gave thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink. Drink all of this. This is the blood of the covenant, which is poured out for the forgiveness of sins. And I tell you, I will not drink from this fruit of the vine from now until the day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Again, this is Matthew chapter 26, verses 17 through 30. So, you see, with Judas Iscariot, he walked with Jesus. He witnessed Jesus' miracles. He was beside Jesus with the rest of the disciples. And he still betrayed him. This is why we have to make sure that we are doing our best to understand what kind of people are at the table. You see, he brought all kinds of things. He brought a level of expertise. He brought certain aspects. He brought a certain perspective. He had certain connections. He was able to do certain things, but he still betrayed Jesus. He sat at the table and still betrayed him. See, we've got to make sure we understand who is at the table and not what. Give me 1 second, guys, to switch over here because I want to show you all this. So the next thing we're going to do is, this is the article. I'm going to read 2 paragraphs from, and we're going to jump right back into the lesson. But this is important because this is everything that we've been talking about. This is the idea that we have so much focused on the material things, on the contributions that someone can make. And so this talks more about that, and then we're going to dive back into our study. But it says here, this is just two paragraphs. It says, "We are the location." Remember, Jesus asked him to go preparations, right? And the disciples said, "Where do you want to go make preparations?" Right? So we are the location, us. When we speak about bringing something to the table, what we are saying is, what can you bring to me? We are so self-absorbed with what someone has to contribute, we fail to look at ourselves to see if we present the correct place setting. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. Often the thought pattern is one-sided. We are only concerned about ourselves, seldomly about the other person or our effect on them. Is your table, this is your space, right? Your mental, physical, emotional, spiritual space. Is your space a healthy one? Is it a safe space? Can people be fed there? What sorts of meals are you preparing? What are your intentions with your company? You see, sometimes, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Sometimes we're setting traps for people. Y'all not going to like me tonight. Sometimes we're setting traps for people. What are your intentions with your company? See, this aspect is a responsibility that we conveniently overlook. After a meal, a relationship, we aren't cleaning or doing the introspective portion. We are leaving the dishes for the next person to come in and clean up before they can sit down. Likewise, the party considering a seat should be attempting to determine whether the table is one they want to sit at. Even more importantly, is it a table they should be sitting at? We're going to get into that in just a moment too. Many of us are bringing great attributes, skills, energy, mindsets, and love to tables that aren't meant for us. We find ourselves being depressed, drained, exhausted, exploited, and beat down from hosts who are trying to absorb everything we have and not feed us in return. We are equally responsible to exercise discernment and correct judgment when searching for our table. I say searching because the truth is we are all looking for a place to call home. We all long for peace and tranquility and somewhere you can grow. And you can't grow if you're malnourished or starved altogether. That's an excerpt out of that article that I just published. You guys can go back and check that out on the source. I know I shared it, so definitely give that a look if you like. But that brings us to the point of tonight's conversation. Are you creating a space for people to grow and learn? You see, when we talk about having a table, we talk about a responsibility. See, if you have a table, Now think about this: if you have a home and you have a table in your home and you invite people over, that means that you now have a responsibility to feed them. So if we're expecting someone to show up at our table, that means we have to have the same energy, we'll use that, the same energy in our expectations of others as we have on ourselves to feed them a quality meal. That's the part that we're overlooking. And that's the part that we are neglecting because that takes work, that takes introspection, that takes resetting. You see, we want to, like I said in the article, we want to leave the dishes for somebody else. We don't want to clean up. We want to enjoy the fruits of our labor. We want to enjoy the experience. We want to enjoy all the good things. And then when that time has dissipated, when that time has dissolved, when that relationship is no longer there and that table is still needing to be clean, we want someone else to come and do the hard work. We want someone else to come and do the heavy lifting. And we got to get out of that mindset, because you can't expect someone that you're looking for, whatever idea of the person that you have in your mind, whoever God has laid on your heart in terms of the things that you would like to see in a mate or in a friendship or in your circle, you can't expect them to show up to a dirty table. Think about real life. Someone invites you over and they're like, man, we're going to have this great meal. And you walk in and the table is a wreck. The table is filthy. The table has old food on it. The table may have bugs on it. Maybe it's been a while since they've cleaned. Maybe they haven't been home. They've been absent-minded. Maybe they just haven't wanted to clean, and they expect you to sit down and enjoy a meal. In the very practical sense, what would you do? Nah, I think I'm good. You know what? We can try this again a different day. Now you just missed out. You as the host just missed out on opportunities to connect with someone. You missed out because you were too busy not wanting to do the hard work. So you have a responsibility. Now, let's say your table is clean and you are anticipating the right kind of individuals. Is your table a space where people can come and openly converse? Are they able to share their innermost thoughts? Are they able to be vulnerable? Are they able to be transparent? Can they confide in you? Can you be trusted with information? Are you setting a space where people can grow and become the best version of themselves? Or are you setting a trap? Are you setting a space where someone can come and you can take everything that they have, all the good attributes that we've talked about, all the good characteristics? You see, many of us have suffered through the trauma and the struggle and the renewal and the resurrection of having to excuse ourselves from tables that were meant to destroy us. You see, we inadvertently sat down with a host that was setting a trap. We inadvertently sat down with someone who was trying to absorb everything from us, take everything from us, destroy us. Someone who was trying to make sure that when they got finished, there'd be nothing left but a valley of dry bones. You see, the word talks about God setting a table in the face of my enemies. Well, guess what? Sometimes your enemies are going to try and sit right there at that table. You've got to be disciplined in this season as well as diligent. You've got to make sure that you set a table that presents itself in such a way that the atmosphere presents itself in such a way that your enemies don't want to have any part of it. No, you know what? I can't do that. That table's too much for me. That company's too much for me. And that brings me to another point. When you look at your table, you have multiple seating. You've got several different spaces. So this is not just about the singular individual. As we've made this argument out to be, what do you bring to the table? We often frame this in the context of just a romantic relationship. But even if you have a romantic relationship in mind, guess what? There are still some other relationships that are going to affect it. So you got to make sure that the rest of the table is in the right shape. I don't mean the physical shape, not the round table, but I mean, you got to make sure that the other individuals, your other guests, are the right kind of people, because you may be expecting that right person. And when that person arrives, they sit down to a Shark Tank. They sit down to people who are trying to destroy them. And guess what? How many relationships have we seen get destroyed by people who were jealous or envious? How many relationships have we seen get destroyed by people who have never been able to have a good relationship, a lasting relationship, but want to turn around and give everybody relationship advice? You see, those people are sitting at tables right now destroying the very thing that they were a guest to be witness to. So you've got to make sure we talk about your new circle and your old circle. You guys know I come back to this often because they cannot coexist. So as you are changing the place setting, as you're preparing for a new meal, you've got to make sure that you don't invite the old guest back. You got to make sure that you've got a new seating arrangement, that you've got new guests coming, that you've got a better circle so that when the right person comes, maybe you have the right person, but you don't want to invite a Judas to your table to pollute everything that's happening. You've got to have more discernment in this season. And part of having that discernment comes with the reset that we've been talking about all year. So when we talk about creating this table, it's not what you can bring, but making sure that the right people are there to dine with you. You see, when you have the right people in your corner, your circle will flourish. When you have the right people sitting at the table, the conversation is rich. When you have the right people sitting at the table, all of a sudden there are ideas coming forth and there are different things happening. And now all of a sudden those people that God had called to help you, that had called to open a door for you, but you weren't ready yet. You were being disobedient. Now that you've gotten to this place of resetting, God can say, you know what? This person can now sit down with you and can open the door that I've been waiting on you to walk through. You see, sometimes we're delaying everything that God has for us because we're too busy being lazy and not wanting to clean our tables. We don't want to go through the hard stuff. We don't want to deal with the things that we are doing wrong, the things that we are struggling with, things that we have to fix. That's what it means to clean your table. Also, I talked about was making sure that you are a person with good intentions, both as the host and as the guest. You see, sometimes, you're not going to like me for this one, but sometimes you're going to tables with the intention of disruption. You're going to tables with the intention to do harm. You're going to tables with the intention to cause chaos and calamity. You're going to tables with the intention of maybe you're seeking retribution. Maybe you want vengeance. You see, you already got the wrong mindset. So now you're going to go to this table and mess everything up. Maybe you're still bitter. Maybe you're still in battle. Maybe you're still betrayed. Maybe you're still heartbroken. But instead of you cleaning your table, you want to go sit at someone else's table and wreak havoc. You want to go sit at someone else's table because you suffered, because you went through something, because you felt slighted, because life wasn't fair to you. You want to go and disrupt somebody else's happiness. You see, you got to do some work too. As I said in the article, it takes both the host and the guest to be on the same page, and not the same page together, but on the same page in terms of healing and prosperity, in terms of your growth. You've got to make sure that you are doing the work that is necessary so that not only you are a desirable guest, but you're also a generous host. As you've heard me say, we are both teachers and students. So we are also both guest and host. You don't just go sit and that's it. You don't just go sit and say, okay, I'm here, feed me. You got to have something to provide in terms of nourishment. So when we talk about a table, we're talking about the collective gathering of two or more individuals. Where two or three are gathered, God's going to be there. So when you got the right table, God's going to be shaking some things up, making the meals and putting some seasoning on it. You're both to be combining the place setting. And this is important because you've got to be thinking about your circle. There's all these different things are part of what we're talking about. Let's say you are in your healing phase and you feel good and you've overcome some things and you've done some hard work and you've done some shadow work and some introspection. Now you're ready to sit at a table. Likewise, that table is also ready for you, but both of you have individuals, other guests trying to tag along and tear some things up. Remember me talking about having to excuse yourself. You see, sometimes you're going to have to excuse yourself from their table in order to go sit at the table that you were meant to. You're going to have to remove yourself from some people, some situations, some areas in order to even see that there's a seat for you at the table that's been designed for you. You see, while you're focused on some old things, while you're focused on the wrong things, while you're focused on the things that are holding you back, you've got a seat that you can't even see. You've got too much in the way. You've got too much cloud in your vision. You've got too much trash on your plate. We're going to get to that in just a minute. You got too much other trash on your plate. So you can't even see that while you think that this is a meal that you should be enjoying, and you can't figure out why you're depressed. You can't figure out why you're tired. You can't figure out why you're sad. You can't figure out why you're always feeling so down and so out and so despondent, because look at what you're eating. You're at a table that you shouldn't be at, eating food that you shouldn't consume. And then you wonder why things aren't going the way that they are. You're poisoning yourself. And again, from the host perspective, don't be someone who's poisoning other people. I will go so far as to say this, and then I've got 3 questions that I want to leave with you all to ask yourselves as you continue through this reset and building your table. Make sure that if you're not ready for guests, that you don't have an open invitation. If you are not ready for guests, you don't have an open invitation. What am I saying? Don't you dare invite people to your table when you're not ready to serve them. Don't you dare invite people to the table when you're not ready to serve them. If you are still dealing with some things, if you are still struggling with some things, if you are still in a situation and in a mindset where you don't know that you can provide the right kind of nourishment, the high quality meal that people deserve when they have done their work and want to come and dine, well, you know what? My house is closed right now. Part of your reset is going to require you to remove yourself. Part of your reset, part of making sure that you've cleaned your table, is to do it while nobody's looking. Is to do it without anybody around, to do it without distraction. Think about this. You're trying to clean your table and you got everybody talking to you. You got everybody in your ear. You got people walking around. You got people doing stuff. Guess what? It's going to take you longer to do it, and you're going to forget some things. You might not ever get the table fully clean because you're too distracted. Sometimes you've got to remove yourself, take a step back in order to get some things done. We talked about this. It's not about isolation, but you have to separate yourself in order to get your table clean. You see, if you got some party crashers still lingering around, they're always going to be what keeps people from wanting to come to your space. How many times have we thought, let's think about this. How many times have you been invited somewhere and your first question is, who all's over there? Your first question, who all's over there? Why? Because you know you're not about to go somewhere with certain people, with certain personalities. You know that you're not going to subject yourself to a certain kind of environment. And so your first question you say is, well, who all's over there? So think about that also in this spiritual sense when we talk about your table. When you have to clean your table, you can't have some party crashers still hanging out, because you won't get your table clean. And then the people that you would like to see sit at your table are looking like, nah, not why they still over there. Not why that person's still there. I know about what they get into. Nope, can't do it. It's all important. So with all that being said, when we talk about the table, we're talking about the persons. We're talking about the personalities. We're talking about the character. It doesn't matter what you bring. As I said before, someone can sit at your table and have nothing of what society would deem of value to contribute. But they listen, they pour into you, they have your back, they hold you down, they lift you up. Those are the kind of people that are bringing you something far beyond the material things that the world's talking about. You can have, how many people do we know, or how many times have we read, how many articles have we seen? People are talking about wealthy people being miserable. They have all the stuff, but they're missing something else. You see, when we start talking about sitting down and dining with people, I want to make sure you got that other stuff. I want to make sure that you got that something else. I want to make sure that anything that I'm lacking, that God sees fit to put in another individual, is there with me. Those are the important things that we have to do. So when we start talking about this table, let's rewire our minds, because the table is not a space for us to brag on our accolades. It's not a space for us to lay out our titles and our degrees and our money and our cars. The table is a place for us to grow and learn and to create understanding and a place of acceptance. You can't do that if you're all you're talking about is all your stuff. You can't do that. You're not even listening, because all you're doing is talk about all the stuff that you've done. You guys all know a one upper, right? Oh, you've done something. Well, I've done it 10 times, 60 times over, and in the freezing cold on top of a mountain. Too busy talking about things that aren't important. We got to make sure the table is meant as a place for us to be comfortable, for us to commune, for us to break bread, as the scripture said, for us to learn and love and engage with one another, a place of inclusivity, diversity, and acceptance. That's what the table is. But it takes the right kind of people to create an atmosphere and to continue to have an atmosphere like that. So with that being said, there's 3 questions that I want to leave with you all as you think about this table, this analogy, and in its practical application. These are some questions that you should be thinking about as you go through the phases of resetting and changing your table, changing the tables that you want to sit at, the interests that you have, and the tables you want to sit at, people who have those tables. And that first question is, when we talk about the table, we've touched on this quite a bit, but you need to ask yourself, what table am I preparing? Will people enjoy the atmosphere? Will the guests enjoy each other? Remember, we talked about the interconnectivity of our circles, the interconnectivity of the people around us, the interconnectivity of our families. Now, of course, you can't always choose family, but you can also choose how you interact with them, where they sit at the table, X, Y, and Z. But with our friendships, we certainly have the capacity and the ability to adjust how the friendships are, the dynamics, and the people. So when we talk about that interconnectivity, it's up to you to determine, will your guests like each other? Will your guests get along? Are you inviting people over that just want to create problems? And you know those people. You know the people who are always mad, always miserable, always got something negative to say, always talking about somebody. I saw something just recently, and this is not the first time I've seen it, or the first time you guys have heard it. But it talked about the fact that I wish I could. I don't want to misquote it, but something to the effect that the conversations are about goals and not people, right? Those are top level conversations, right? I also saw something that said that people at the top are collaborating, people at the bottom are in competition. That's the difference, right? Different things of that nature. So you want to make sure that you're thinking about all those aspects, right? And then you think about what is it that you're feeding people. When people come into your sphere of influence, are they left diminished? Are they left empowered? What kind of meal are you preparing for those people? Because we all have a responsibility. There is someone somewhere in our immediate, our secondary, tertiary, and of course, you've heard me talk about the butterfly and the ripple effect. People that you'll never meet that were affected positively by your obedience. But we'll stick to the immediate. We'll bring it all the way back in. But everyone has someone who's looking up to them. Everyone has someone who's feeding off of what they're giving. Even if it's on social media, you got some followers who are diligent and consistent and show up to get what you're feeding them. So you got to make sure that you're giving them a quality meal. Is it just volume or is it quality? And I'm going to touch on the difference of that in just a moment. But before we get there, question number 2, how large is the table? Now you might be wondering, what do you mean by that? Some of us have tables that are so large, we don't even know who's sitting there. We have such a strong desire to be liked. We have such a strong desire to have company. We have such a fear and aversion to being by ourselves that we'll let anyone and everyone come sit down just so that we're not alone. Whether it's alone with our thoughts, alone with the past, alone with the things that we have to change, alone with the things that we're trying to work on, whatever it is, there's an aversion to something that we don't want to have to deal with, something that we don't have to work on. So we have a table that is just full, like they said in Great Gatsby, of interesting people. But not all those people are people that should be there. Not all those people mean you good. Not all those people want to see you succeed. Not all those people want you to be the person that God has called you to be. And the problem with having them sitting there is that now they have an inside lane. Now they've got the inside scoop. Now they are on the in team. They have intimate knowledge they can use against you. We talk about having saboteurs in the camp. When you have a table that's so large, you don't know who's sitting there. It's a very high probability that you've got saboteurs and spies sitting right there next to you. You've got a whole house full of Judases. You've got to be careful. You've got to start looking at that table, bringing that table down, whittling that thing in, bringing it in, reel it in, because you can't have a table so large that you don't know who's there. That's a recipe for disaster. That's a recipe for being overextended. Let's be practical. If you've got so many people at your table, you don't know how you're going to feed them all. Guess what? You're overextended. Now you're panicking. Now you don't know what you're going to do. Same thing happens in the spirit. You've got so many people pulling. You got so many people who are trying to steal, take, who are trying to kill, steal, and destroy, what the devil does. Now you're panicking. Now you have anxiety. Now you're depressed. Now you're spiraling. Why? Because you overextend yourself trying to be all things to all people when God calls you to be just yourself. Be what He's called you to be, and then simply work with the people that He has placed around you. You have a gift and a calling. You have a direction. You have a trajectory. You have a vector. You have everything in place. You can't do it all. That's why everybody has different gifts and talents. But see, you're so busy trying to be everybody's friend. You're so busy trying to have everyone's gift and talent. You're so busy trying to have everybody like you that you've got people that shouldn't ever be there sitting at your table. So that's the next question. How large is your table? Evaluate that. We are in a season where your friendships matter. We're in a season where your connections matter. We're in a season where the people that you are interchanging with, that you are exchanging with, that you are interfacing with matters. All of that matters in this season. So you got to make sure, to the best of your ability, that you got the right people around you, that you got people who are encouraging you, who are holding you accountable for the quality of your table and the quality of your meal, and making sure that you're getting the best out of your life and your experience just as much as they are. Point number 3, of course, this is the entire foundation of all we've talked about. Who is arriving? You've got to make sure that the people that are coming, and this is asking the hard questions. This is having the interview process, if you will. We don't like to think of it that way, but to some degree it is. You've got to make sure the people who are coming to sit down, if you've done the hard work and you've got a pristine table and you've done all these things to make sure that you are like, okay, God, I got it set here. I'm ready for the right kind of people to show up. You got to make sure that the people who show up are the right kind of people, because there's a lot of people out here. Espionage is a real thing in the world and in the spirit. You got a lot of people out here who are going to present themselves in a certain way and have ulterior motives and have an agenda. So you've got to make sure the people who are arriving mean well. Sometimes you're not going to figure this out till a little bit later on, and maybe after the first course, and you've had some dialogue, and you're like, whoa, wait a second. Guess what? It's your table. You can ask them to leave. That's a whole other word right there. It's your table. You can ask them to leave. Do not be afraid. That's what the word says. It's your table. You can ask them to leave. This goes back to wanting everybody to like us. Sometimes you're going to rub people the wrong way. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit prickly. The word says it's sharper than any two-edged sword, right? It's going to pierce. It's going to poke. It's going to prod. You're going to have to do some things that are maybe uncomfortable. You're going to have to make some other people uncomfortable. Guess what? It's your table. And if you're serious about your table, if you're serious about the quality of your table, the quality of the experience, the quality of the meals, the quality of the atmosphere, you're going to have to ask some people to leave sometimes. That's a hard reality. We don't like to think about that. But you're going to have to ask some people to leave sometimes, because you got people who are going to come and dine in silence. They don't want to say anything. They don't want to talk. They just want to reap the benefits. They don't want to support. They don't want to help. How many of us have ideas and different things that we're trying to do, different projects and initiatives, and we're asking for support? And a lot of times these things don't cost anybody anything but time, and they still don't show up. You see, those are people who are coming to sit in silence. They want to ride the coattails of the success, but they don't want to help do anything. They don't even want to show up for you. You got to make sure you don't have people like that sitting at your table. You got to make sure people who want to go plates, right? They want to come, get all up to the table, couple highs, some high fives, and, oh, what you got for me? Let me go and get out of here. They don't want to be held accountable. They don't want to change. They don't want to do anything. They just want to get what they can get and on to the next table. Got to check for those people too. And then the most dangerous, you got to watch out for people who are trying to come and poison your meal. You got people, and some of us at some times of our lives have been the people who are trying to poison the meal, whether it is to get you directly, or again, we talk about the rest of your guests and the rest of the people who are enjoying your company, the rest of your circle. Maybe there's someone trying to get at someone in your camp. So maybe they're coming to poison the whole watering hole to get rid of this one person. Maybe they want to see this other person. This person is now connected to you. This person's prospering. You're prospering. They're not worried about you so much, but you're the host. So these people are at your table and they notice that, oh, well, I see they're over there with so-and-so. Let me go over here and disrupt things, because I don't want that person to ever have anything. I don't want that person to ever be successful. I don't want that person to ever grow. I don't want that person to ever elevate. I don't want that person to ever ascend. So I'm going to do my very best to destroy the table that this person is sitting at, simply so they don't ever get anywhere. You got to watch for those people, because there are people out here who may not be trying to come after you, but come after people in your circle, people at your table. You got to watch out for those people. So you got to make sure you understand who is arriving. A lot of the deterrence is going to be the type of table you set, the etiquette, the way that you carry yourself, the atmosphere. A lot of those things will deter the wrong kind of actors. But some of them are going to slip through the cracks. So you've got to be diligent, making sure that you are continuing to do the work, continuing to reset, continuing to grow, continuing to evolve, because some of them are very, very good. Some of them are very, very good at slipping through the front lines, that first line of defense. And they're going to work their way in and see how far they can get. You got to be able to recognize them. Now, one thing I want to say on top of who's arriving that was just hit me in the spirit right before we got on tonight. And you might not like me for this one, but it's something I was really thinking about that we hadn't discussed as much or as in depth. But when we talk about being at the wrong table, we framed it in the context of, disaster and calamity. We framed it in the context of being around the wrong people, and that's 90% of why you're at the wrong table. You're not supposed to be there because it's going to be detrimental to your progress, detrimental to your growth, detrimental to the position and the direction that God's taking you in. But there's a 10% that we often overlook too, and really the Holy Spirit has dropped this in my spirit. And sometimes we're at the wrong table because it's not time to sit down yet. I want you guys to think about that for a second. You see, sometimes we're at the wrong table, not because there's not a seat for us, but it's not time to sit down yet. You see, you got some people who are hosting 6-course meals, and they want to serve foie gras, and they want to serve filet, and they want to serve, different types of very upscale meals. But you sitting there, you still want cheeseburgers and chicken nuggets. You see, your palate hasn't refined yet. You haven't come to understand the importance, and you haven't come to understand the privilege of the other meals. You see, you're still living in a mindset that leaves you relatively immature for the next level. So we don't talk about that, but sometimes we're at the wrong table because we're not mature enough to handle what they're serving, right? We're not in a place where we have done enough work. We've not learned enough. We've not studied enough. We've not groomed ourselves enough. There's not been enough pruning for us to sit at that table yet. I think about when I was growing up, and I think many of us had that. You had the adult table and you had the kid table, right? And at different gatherings and different holidays, especially with the holiday season right around the corner, I remember very vividly always looking up and being like, man, one day I'm gonna be at that adult table. One day I'm gonna be at the adult table. And then you find yourself when you are adolescent, you maybe into your young adult years, and you're old enough, right? You're old enough to sit at the adult table. And you're like, yeah, I'm finally at the adult table. And then you hear the quality of conversation happening at the adult table. You hear the topics and you hear the things that are happening, the critical thinking, and you hear all these things going on at the adult table. And you're like, I'm gonna go sit at the kid table and talk about cartoons, because you're not mature enough yet, right? You may look like you may have aged, you may have been on the earth long enough, but a lot of things haven't happened yet for you to be able to sit at the adult table. So the same concept is here. You see, there's a table waiting for you, and there are some people that have prepared some fine dining, but you've got to refine your palate. You've got to refine your etiquette. You've got to be dressed well. You've got to be articulate. I'm talking, these are practical, but in the spirit, we're talking about your maturity. We're talking about your discernment. We're talking about your level of spiritual aptitude. We're talking about being able to change the atmosphere of a room in the positive, right? Things that only come about by not just prayer, fasting, and study, but the change of your character. You see, there's some stuff that's happening on the inside. There's a reset we've been talking about. There's some things that's been happening that you haven't quite got there yet. You're working on it. And there's always going to be a different level. You see, once you get to this table, then there's going to be another table. And at that table, it's going to be even more distinguished. It's even going to be more elegant. But you've got to work your way up. And so you see, I want to leave you guys with that, to be thinking about that maybe you're not at the right table because you're not mature enough yet to handle what's happening there. You haven't gotten enough stuff out of your system yet. You haven't set down enough baggage. You haven't healed enough. Whatever euphemism you want to use. There's some things that are happening that you haven't quite overcome. And that's why you can't sit at that table yet. Told you guys you might not like me for tonight, but it's a real thing. As much as I want to encourage you, we also have to hold you accountable and realize that, you know what, I want you to be at the right table, but the right table requires the right sorts of prerequisites. Right? The right table requires the right sorts of prerequisites. You've got to have some stuff in order. You've got to have your suit or your dress pressed and ready. You've got to have on the right accessories. You've got to understand the nomenclature, and you've got to be able to speak the way that they speak. You've got to be able to have the conversation at the level they have the conversation. You've got to be able to move in such a way that people are happy that you're there, because you can not only impart something, but you can learn something as well. You've heard me talk about, and I got this from my boy Chesco, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. If you're the smartest person at the table, you're at the wrong table. You should be learning and growing everywhere you go, but sometimes you're trying to run before you can walk. Right? We talk about moving prematurely. This is a prime example. You're at a table, and the reason why it's uncomfortable, the reason why you don't feel like you fit in, the reason why you don't feel like you belong there, it's not because you don't belong there, it's because you're not ready to be there yet. So you try to move too fast. You try to circumvent God's plan, and now you're uncomfortable because you're not in the place that you should be. Not because you don't belong there, but because you tried to move too fast and you're not ready. So I want to leave you guys with those things, man. Ask yourselves those questions. What table am I preparing? How large is the table? And who is arriving? And also realize that maybe you're not ready for the table that you're at. You can aspire to be there, and that should be a goal. for you to attain. That table there, I want to be at that table. Well, you find out what it takes to be at that table, and then you go and do it. That's how you change. That's how you mature. That's how you prosper. That's how you get to a place where you set yourself apart, not only for the recognition, but for the opportunity to then reach back and bring other people up to your table as well. Guys, this is all the time I have for you tonight. Thank you so much. I hope that you were inspired. I hope that you were challenged. And I hope that you were really thinking about this table concept and really to understand that it's not about what people bring, but it's about who comes to the table. And it's also about what kind of table is being set. Remember, you are always going to be both the host and the guest. So it's your responsibility to make sure that you're the appropriate of both. Guys, remember that this new life is for everyone. And before I sign off, I want to remind you that this Friday we will have our morning glory prayer. That'll be at 7 a.m. Pastor will come on and he will give us a word. Again, as you heard me say, it's always a great time to end the week. Get ready for the weekend. No matter what's happening, you can always have a great word and be inspired, encouraged, and uplifted, and let the rest of the week go. Likewise, Saturday, Positive Pivot. We'll drop another one, get you guys encouraged, get you guys to get excited about the following week, and get you primed for our Sunday morning worship experience. As don't forget, if you are in the New Jersey area, definitely show up and worship with us. If you are not, you can join me virtually here at the sanctuary. We'll be fellowshipping with them online. Guys, we also want you to know that we feel like New Life is good ground to sow into. So we put our giving methods up here on the screen. Our midweek refill, $24 seed. If you can and are able, make sure you sow your seed. We got Cash App, Zelle, Givelify, and of course you can mail it in. If you cannot do that while we're still online, just whenever you get a chance, go back and do that if you're using the online platform. If you can do it right now, make sure you type seed sown in the chat, and we'll be praying over that seed because we believe that God is going to bless you exponentially for your obedience. It's not about what you give. It's about being obedient in your giving. And obedience is how you get blessed, as always, not just in this season, but in every season next. It's about you being obedient. Again, guys, I want to remind you that New Life is for everyone. So as always, let's change the way that we think. So we change the way that we live. Until next time, stay blessed.